Guilty. 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 You guys.
12 Angry Men was released in 1957 and something's not quite right here, is it? It's better. It was directed by Sidney Lumet and written by Reginald Rose. I've watched 12 Angry Men as part of my movie project to watch the IMDB.com's top 250 movies of all time. And this film sits at number 6 in the top 250, and rightly so because it is a masterpiece. 12 jurors serving on a murder case retire to the juror room to discuss their verdict. 11 men vote guilty, 1 not guilty. Can one man change the minds of the other 11 in what is apparently an open and shut case? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, don't just consider subscribing.
Do it! Do it!
And if you like this video, please like this video. 12 Angry Men is proof, as if proof were needed, that sometimes less is more. 99% of the film is filmed within a single room. We have 12 characters and they talk to each other for 96 minutes. And that's the film. But I absolutely love 12 Angry Men, and it's very likely my favourite black and white film of all time. As it's such a classic and so old, I'm likely to go into spoiler territory. If you've never seen 12 Angry Men, go and watch it now. Go on, off you go. I'll wait. Actually, I better crack on with the review if that's okay. So why is this film so damn good? For me, it boils down to the 3 fundamentals of making a film: the direction, the writing, and the acting. And in this particular instance, how they work perfectly in unison. This, amazingly, is Sidney Lumet's feature-length directorial debut. According to IMDB, he has 75 directing credits to his name, including 2 other entries into the IMDB top 250 films of all time, which are Dog Day Afternoon and Network. But holy shit, having one of the best films of all time as your very first film must be incredibly gratifying and probably quite difficult to deal with. That knowledge that in all likelihood you'll probably never make a better film in your entire career. And you really can't tell it's his first film. It's masterfully shot and put together. The opening shot of the 12 jurors coming into the room is expertly done, one long take where we get a little snippet of what each of these 12 men is about. The filming is mostly done from up high to begin with, as things start relatively jovially. The room feels open. As things get more serious, there are more tighter close-ups and lower shots, which all make the room feel a lot smaller than it is, which increases the tension and claustrophobia. And there are lots of little neat camera tricks like this that you barely actually notice, but you feel them. For example, when at the start Henry Fonda's character has nobody on his side, the camera films him from above. It's looking down on him, like most of the jurors are at this point. As he becomes more sure of himself and gets more jurors on his side, the camera drops down to eye level. We're with him at this point. Then near the end, as he's won over nearly all the jurors and he has the moral high ground, the camera drops below him. He's above those who are remaining. It's brilliantly effective, and as I said, it's almost something you feel rather than really truly notice. Unless you're doing a movie review, of course. It's just a massive credit to Lumet and all the people who made 12 Angry Men that it never ever looks dull. Due to the sharp writing and incredible acting, it never feels dull, but it's a real credit that it's always interesting to look at. On the subject of sharp writing, Reginald Rose's screenplay really should be taught in film classes, or indeed in creative writing classes. Again, less is more here. Rose is able to let us feel who all these men are without actually giving us much information. We don't know any of their names apart from 2 characters which you learn in the very final scene of the film. We don't know what they all do for work. We don't know their social or family situations. And yet, through subtlety and a continual use of showing and not telling, we know who these men are. Juror 1, played by Martin Balsam, is a simple man, the coach of his local football team. As the foreman of the jury, he organises and tries to keep things moving. He doesn't have much to say and doesn't weigh in too often when the debate gets heated. Juror 2, played by John Fiedler, has an almost childlike quality, the kind of man who probably lives with his parents most of his life. He lacks confidence but seems to be enjoying the whole process. There's a likeable innocence about him, and he doesn't enjoy the angrier of the angry men. Juror 3, played by Lee J. Cobb, is the angriest of the angry men, a bitter, rage-filled man who seems to have a personal vendetta against the defendant. He is the most belligerent and unflinching of those who first vote guilty. Juror 4, played by E.G. Marshall, is meticulous. He has an eye for the finer details of the case and presents his side of the story methodically, as if he were a lawyer himself. Juror 5, played by Jack Klugman, is quiet and shy, seemingly out of his depth as he struggles to get his point across. His social background means he's the only one of the 12 to have something in common with the defendant. Juror 6, played by Edward Binns, is that typical New York salt-of-the-earth type, a grafter, the type who respects his ma and fears his pa, and the one who threatens to punch out the lights of the most disrespectful juror. Juror 7, played by Jack Warden, is just not interested in being here. He has tickets for the baseball game and wants to leave at any cost, even if it means changing his vote for no other good reason. Juror 8, played by Henry Fonda, is our hero. Dressed in white, he is presented as a good man, who at least wants to give the defendant the fairest chance possible, even if he at first feels he is probably guilty. Juror 9, played by Joseph Sweeney, is the oldest juror. He doesn't feel like he can get involved early on, dominated by these younger men, but as he finds something in common with some of the stories of the witnesses, he makes sure his wisdom and voice is heard. Juror 10, played by Ed Begley, is the other very angry man. We find out pretty early on that this is a man filled with prejudice. He has already decided on the guilt of the defendant based on his race and background. Juror 11, played by George Voskovich, is the only non-American on the jury. He is most keen to uphold the law and make sure everything is done correctly, in the American way. Juror 12, played by Robert Webber, is a career man and enjoys life. He is respectful of the trial, but he just seems to want to have a good time. All these little character traits are dripped through as the film progresses. It's always subtle, realistic, and done really economically within the writing. This is the archetypal show, don't tell screenplay. Finally, to the acting, and as with the writing, the direction, the editing, and pretty much everything else in this film, it's a masterclass. Henry Fonda is fantastic as the hero. The character's not just a simple goody-goody, there's nuance and doubt about him, and Fonda gives us all this through his brilliant performance. In one great moment, in one of the few scenes shot outside the juror room, juror number 6 asks him, "What if you changed the mind of all the other 11 jurors?" And the kid actually did it. In a wordless response, Fonda shows that his character just hasn't thought of this. You see on his face the responsibility and the stakes of what he's trying to do has just gone up massively. Another standout performance for me is Ed Begley, the racist juror number 10, who gets totally shut down during one of his long tirades as the other jurors all stand up from the table and turn their back on him. And again, just by his subtle response, we see how this has kind of devastated his worldview. The absolute star of the show, though, is Juror 3, Lee J. Cobb. He probably gets the most screen time alongside Fonda, and he's absolutely phenomenal and completely believable. His character gets the best arc of the film. We learn that he's fallen out with his adult son after a fight and he hasn't seen him for 2 years. This has made him a bitter man, intent on blaming everyone else apart from himself. The defendant has become the embodiment of this estranged son. In the best and most memorable scene of this film, Fonda has turned 10 of the other jurors and we just have this juror, number 3, left. In his final angry rant, a picture of his son falls from his wallet, and in seeing this, he flies into a rage and tears the picture apart. And in that moment, his whole world comes crashing down. He realises what he's done, not only in the sort of hour and a half before this, but perhaps in the last 2 years, perhaps his whole life. He sobs, not guilty, not guilty. And the battle of the 12 Angry Men is essentially over. It's one of my all-time favourite movie scenes. So I really hope you've seen 12 Angry Men, but if you haven't, please go and watch it. If you have, who's your favourite juror and what's your favourite scene? Let me know in the comments below. So what don't I like about 12 Angry Men? I'm not a great fan of the font used in the opening credits, and the words aren't capitalised. And I suppose the names are a little bit misleading because although all the men get riled at times, there's only really 2 angry men. I suppose the name 10 men of varying demeanours and 2 angry men is just not as punchy. 12 Angry Men is just one of the best. It's number 6 on IMDB's top 250 films of all time for several good reasons. It's an immaculately written, directed, edited, paced, scored, acted movie. I would probably have to use the word perfect, apart from that font. My score for 12 Angry Men is obviously, and without any doubt, 10 out of 10. Thanks for watching.
Game over, man. It's game over.